Welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast. Island Time, Week 4 preview. Aloha, gentlemen. This is BuckMetrics, as always, joined by Robert Martin, and as always on Island Time, by our guy, Duck. Gentlemen, we had a pretty good weekend last week. I did not size my bets or make my bets properly, so don't really have a lot to show for it, but overall pretty good and good analysis born of very sharp takes. This is the last week before we get the dual model plays. Last time to really tax our brains before we just kind of coast for a little bit. Let me see. I don't have any records of the official plays, but if you are new, thank you for joining us. I don't have our glossary, but thank you for joining us. This podcast exceeds my expectations every week, and if you're returning, as I like to say, you are by definition brilliant. And with that, we'll get to our first game. This is the Fox Big Noon kickoff. Texas Tech at Utah. This number seems to be going down. I don't know if it's down from 3 when I updated these last night. Really good game here. I just need to talk through my process here because I'm not sure how I feel about this. This is a good one to watch, obviously. Utah is always a fun place to watch a game if it's not your team that's playing there and making Dalton Kincaid look like an All-American for the 5th time in his career. Yeah, we got an interesting... let's look at the quality of opponent here. Texas Tech has played Arkansas Pine Bluff, which I guess is near Arkansas Pine Bluff. Kent State, which is not very good. Oregon State, was clearly of the horrible Pac-2. Take those numbers with a grain of salt for quality of opponent. And at the same time, Utah's played UCLA. I think we all know how that's been going. An FCS Cal Poly, and then at Wyoming, who is probably not that good. So you've got some pretty weak opponents here on both sides. Fair to say that Texas Tech is a better passing game here. Apex at 181-91. Utah very much a good running team. Not surprising with Devin Dampier. Texas Tech more explosive in the passing game. Like we all expected when we did the Big 12 preview, Utah's really got a real more classic Kyle Whittingham defense this year. 31 defensive apex. They haven't played anybody that can really throw the ball, but that's about as good as we can really expect. Texas Tech with a really good run defense here. The 13 defensive G-Gab. Now, that doesn't... that's interesting. I guess I'm a little concerned here if there's one thing that sticks out to me here about really above everything else that really surprises me is Utah a little generous with the run defense here. Although I'm seeing a good but certainly far from dominant run offense here for Texas Tech. I don't really know what to make of this game. I'm just really am more interested to watch this one. Duck, let me go to you. You have a strong opinion on this one?
I bet Utah, yeah, I did, at -3. Excuse me. What I see is, first of all, good game, a good data point for both. We'll really learn a lot here. Texas Tech has just not been tested, and we have no idea what we're going to get out of this bunch when facing a tough opponent on the road. It's a 10 a.m. local time kick, and it's just really hard to envision what we're going to see from their prep. This game's going to look so much different than every one of their previous 3 games because they're going to have to play competitive football in the second half. I think Utah's rush offense and their offensive scheme in general with Devin Dampier has just been exquisite. 6 yards per rush as a team. They're converting 72% on third down. 15 of 16 red zone trips have resulted in touchdowns. And in the offseason, the question on Devin Dampier was, can he actually pass the ball at this level? Look at all those INTs against New Mexico, or when he was with New Mexico. But he was playing behind a bottom 10 FBS offensive line and was running for his life always. Now he has a competent line blocking for him. He's completing 73%, 7 touchdowns, no picks, mistake-free football. And I think they're just humming on all cylinders. They've at least been challenged on the road by UCLA and Wyoming in those environments, which Texas Tech has not done. And if you don't think Laradice is a tough place to play, just ask Texas Tech about how their most recent trip to Wyoming went. It is a tough place to play, so they've at least challenged themselves there. The Texas Tech offensive stats look gaudy, but I just have to consider the competition played. 3 defenses that are just absolute garbage in Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State. I just need to see them do it against somebody else in order for me to really want to start believing that Texas Tech is going to be a major player. And Utah defends well against the pass, just allowing 134 passing yards per game and 50% completions. It's just Texas Tech's going to be in a real battle. Whether or not they win or cover this game, TBD. I bet Utah, but Texas Tech is going to have to do some things in their prep this week that's different than what they've done all season, and they're going to be in the heat of battle in the third and fourth quarter. So, how's their conditioning? How did they prepare? Because it's something they have not done all year to this point.
Yeah, fair point, Saul. And Robert, I always like to use my Trojans as an example because I process it better since I live it. USC had a couple of real tomato cans in Missouri State, especially defensively, in Missouri State and Georgia Southern. And Purdue is far from an awesome defense, but they're just a competent, I would say, Big Ten defense. And USC looked totally different. So if you had to basically pick one side to have a little, I guess, something of a culture shock in terms of, oh boy, this isn't as easy as we thought. Who has the culture shock here? Who suffers the culture shock?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to think here, too. And I think we talked a little bit about this game on the last podcast, or I think so. Technically, my model has this, I think, is basically even. Texas Tech at Utah. However, there's some important caveats into that, though. One of which I think the most glaring is of all, excluding the FCS teams, because we don't really, you're basically splitting hairs at that point. So what's better, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, or Cal Poly? But of all those opponents, UCLA is the best of all four of them, hands down, right? Of all the FCS opponents. But the problem is that, according to our models, their models doesn't really know that, and I'm fairly sure it's, UCLA, you mean that team that lost by 3 scores to a Mountain West team? See, that's the thing, right? See, like, in real life, we're like, okay, they very clearly gave up some point before that game. Like, they may have actually been trying against Utah, and then they just gave up against New Mexico. Maybe they gave up before the game. Maybe they gave up 5 minutes into the game. I'm not sure exactly. But that's very clearly not what UCLA is on. Like, they're not that bad. They're not supposed to lose by multiple scores to a Mountain West team. So the problem is, though, the model doesn't understand that. The model's, you mean that really bad team? What's the Big Ten? I don't know what the Big Ten is. So this is the thing, right? So I think that Utah might actually be getting penalized a little bit because of their win over UCLA, because I think the model kind of is thinking UCLA is worse than they actually are right now.
That is a mouthful, by the way.
Yes.
That says a lot.
Yes, it's crazy, but I think it might actually be true. Kent State and Oregon State, both pretty bad. Like, these are not particularly good teams, and Wyoming also not a particularly good team. So, although my model does say Texas Tech, it is very early. One data point. Again, it doesn't seem like that's correlated, but, like, literally New Mexico destroying UCLA could have shifted this from a 7-point Utah -7 down to a pick, right? That alone, right? So I think Utah's going to win this game. I have some Utah futures, so I'm not chomping at the bit to bet this game. If Texas Tech were to score and I could get something like Utah +3 or something like that, that would entice me back into the market here. But I have enough Utah futures. I feel comfortable enough in those Utah futures. I just want to sit back and watch this game, and if I get a live betting opportunity, I'll take it.
Yeah, the one thing, too, is as I dig in a little deeper, I do think that notwithstanding how bad UCLA has been and just they don't like to tackle, as we pointed out, at Wyoming can be a challenging place. Kent State, we've talked a lot about that, and the Pac-2 is just really miserable this year. I guess when I dig into that a little bit, I'm really interested in this difference in the run game right here. I would like to see Texas Tech have been able to run for more than this. They're literally like half the GGAP per game as Utah. And you've got 2 very obliging defenses in Kent State and Oregon State there. I'm probably thinking that it'll be a little different. They won't run as well, even though there's a little bit of give here in this Utah numerically or metrically run defense here. And I guess if I have to measure these 2 numbers, if I have to normalize, what regresses more? This ridiculous Ryan per game for Texas Tech or the defensive apex for Utah? I think this number goes down rather than the defensive apex for Utah goes up. Is that kind of how this one plays out, Duck?
I think that Utah's been solid against the pass. They haven't faced a passing attack as explosive as this one yet, so it could be a little bit of both. The styles are so contrasting. Texas Tech's GGAB is low because they don't run the ball. And, I don't expect them to have a real explosive or prominent rushing attack because they throw 50 passes a game. And it's just the way that their style operates. But you can do that when you're blasting all these easy teams early in the season, but there's going to be situations where they're going to have to get a yard.
Yeah, and I guess that concerns me too. I like when my blowouts to be physical dominance on the ground. I get a little concerned when it's through the air. That just concerns me. Remind me, who was the OC? I generally forgot at Texas Tech. Oh, it was the guy from Texas State, right? Or am I confused? Did I stump the audience here?
Spavital? He's at Baylor.
I think they got Texas State's OC.
I don't have that memorized.
All right, I don't feel so bad for not knowing that now. If Duck doesn't know, off his head, nobody outside of Lubbock knows.
Yeah,
or maybe
Mac
San
Leftwich.
Marcos.
You're right. Yes. Texas State of Mac Leftwich.
And that's interesting too, because Texas Tech sneakily runs the ball a lot, do they not? Isn't that kind of a GJ Kenny thing? They run for volume. I think that, Robert, if you were paying attention yesterday, weren't they like one of the top 10 GGABs, Texas State, I think, or they had something like that. I think they were like one of the top running offenses. Yeah, that just is interesting that they wouldn't do that. I would think you'd want to just toughen up. I'm sorry, Duck, you were going to say something there.
I guess Texas Tech's 50-50 run pass too, 111 rushing attempts, 5.8 yards per carry. That's honestly not terrible. And 70-some-odd% completion percentage on 111 passing attempts for 1,163 passing yards. And efficient all around is what it's been. But considering the competition, we still don't know.
Yeah, and that's it. Even when they're not great, Utah's still a physical team. So
yeah, Ham said at the beginning of the summer in his pressers that this was the best offensive line that he's ever had. He's rarely talked up a position group like that, and I think people just took it as coach speak. But their offensive line is incredible. Anyone needed to believe that, and I did buy some stock in their futures early in the summer. So Robert, you and I probably have a similar number, and I'm all in on Utah, and they really do look the part.
I think you have a small futures on Mr. Morton too, a Heisman like at a gaudy price. Do you not?
It is in the portfolio. It's nothing I'm putting a lot of stock in, but 300 to 1 I do. 300 to 1.
There you go. Okay, so you're a little bit hedged on both ways here. So definitely one to watch though for sure. All right, that brings us to the next game, Maryland at Wisconsin. I was just flummoxed by this. I go through my kind of steps about, can I figure this out by my own? Can I figure it out with some numbers? Robert and I figured it out, and Robert's numbers agreed with it, and I want another voice to say yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down on this. Maryland at Wisconsin, and this number has moved at least a couple points. It was 7.5 when I put this together, and it's jumped up to 9.5. Robert and I, and our immature data models, we both have Maryland here, straight up. Now, again, there might be some light bending incidents with how badly they beat up FAU. Weirdly, this kind of refracts into Northern Illinois yet again, which seems to be an annual thing with Northern Illinois being a screw up or a screwy up, whatever. But I like Maryland. I guess my eyeballs like Maryland too. If I just do a breakdown here real quick of the numbers, you've got a more explosive passing offense here. I think that I love the upside of Maryland and their freshman quarterback versus the known quantity that is whichever short straw I'm stuck with between Billy Edwards and Danny O'Neal. I'll take what's behind door number 3 instead. Thank you very much. Wisconsin struggling on pass defense. I guess okay on run defense. Maryland, look, they're not that good on pass defense. I think that's a function of playing a couple teams that are, FAU, brand new, struggling to throw the ball. Northern Illinois is a complete roster overhaul. The model and the eyeballs line up. And then the numbers has moved away from 7.5 to 9.5. I just don't like Wisconsin in general. Just the whole vibe was bad. It wasn't like I was really hip on Maryland coming into the season either. Duck, just give me your thoughts on the Wisconsin side of this first.
Not a good football team, not going to win a lot of games the rest of the way, but this is absolutely a spot where they should pound Maryland into the ground. I think their defense will completely control the lines of scrimmage. You look at Maryland in the red zone, 14 red zone trips this season, 5 touchdowns only. So they're not finishing drives. They haven't executed well on third down, has Maryland. I thought Maryland was the benefactor of a lot of jerky play by FAU. FAU had 6 interceptions, 3 of them were on the goal line, and they were stopped on downs 5 times in that game. So you have to look at those stopped on downs as turnovers. So FAU had 11 possessions that they had in the game that did not end in a kick. So they either stopped on downs or threw an interception, and completely just. That's why the game went sideways against Florida Atlantic. It really was FAU working out the new scheme and the new pass-happy approach with their new personnel and trying to learn it on the fly. And it just was so jerky for FAU. And then you really saw Northern Illinois just shut down this Maryland attack after they had scored so many points at home. And NIU was really able to control the pace and keep that game super tight throughout. And then they played FCS Towson last week, which is no surprise that they put up a big number there. But I don't know. 33% is what they're converting on third down. I think Maryland might struggle here to protect the quarterback. They've done okay this season up to this point, but they're not going to have faced any sort of athletes like what they're going to line up against Wisconsin. And I think Wisconsin will be able to scheme it up to really limit Maryland's explosivity. Both these teams I would probably desire to fade after this game, but this is one where I think when you look at Maryland and their propensity to kick field goals in the red zone, Wisconsin defensively has been airtight in the red zone. Maryland does allow a significant amount of pass explosiveness, so if there's any chance that Wisconsin has anything of a competent pass attack, we'll see it on display here against Maryland.
Man, that's where you lose me. The Danny O'Neal, Billy Edwards. Is Billy Edwards still hurt, do we know? Because I think O'Neal played last week, right?
See, that's the thing. Nobody had worse quarterback play in the entire Mountain West last season than San Diego State, and Danny O'Neal was a big part of that. But I think Billy Edwards was announced that he's to play this week, so it could be a little bit of a different story at quarterback for Wisconsin.
Okay. That is a leap of faith, my friend.
And I'm not saying I have not bet the game, and I'm not telling people to run to the window.
Okay.
I'm just saying in this game, had Wisconsin not been blown out in the second half against Alabama, and even if the final was just a little closer, this line was set to open at 13.5, and I think everyone would be running to the window to bet Wisconsin because the perception is you're getting them under 2 touchdowns. I think they'll win the game by 17 to 20 points.
Wow. All right, Robert, I misspoke. Your model has Wisconsin by 1 here, right?
I think so. I have it very close. But again, that's still a very strong play on Maryland. I'll say that Maryland just does stuff sometimes if it makes sense. Again, it's weird how Maryland. I've got Wisconsin -1. Maryland sometimes is just randomly competitive in games they shouldn't be competitive in, and I don't completely trust Wisconsin. I get that maybe they might have the better O-line and maybe the D-line, but people have been able to pass against Wisconsin, as you can see from the 122 defensive apex. Lake Washington hasn't looked horrible either. I think Maryland does weird things, but I really don't trust this Wisconsin thing. I guess Wisconsin is probably the better team, but Maryland just randomly sometimes shows up in some of these games, and this is probably one of their only winnable games going forward in terms of Big Ten play. So I think this is too many points. I think I'd take some points here. But again, it's early. We could be wrong on this, but I'd throw a little bit on this just to see what happens. But it's weird how this line just keeps going up, right? Normally the books are confident that they have the right number. That line just sits there, but the line is going up. That speaks to what Duck is saying there.
What I'd be concerned about is Wisconsin is allowing 1.9 yards per rush this season. That includes their game against Alabama. Alabama only ran the ball for 72 yards on 22 attempts, and Wisconsin's allowing 5 points per game at home. I just think when you're Maryland and you're lining up and you're trying to run the football with DeJuan Williams and Nolan Ray, and you're just getting 2 yards a carry, you're gonna have to put a lot on the shoulders of the quarterback. And I just don't know if you got a young guy in Malik Washington who's going into Camp Randall. It's going to be a hostile environment, and when they're down by a couple touchdowns in the third quarter and it's 3rd and 12 and they're backed up and you've got to have him make a throw in order to just try and stay in it and cover the number, that's just not something I would want to be a part of right now for Maryland.
Yeah, just to continue that thought, what I'm pulling up here is we've had 2 conference games in the Big Ten. USC at Purdue and Oregon at Northwestern. I don't think those are among the hardest venues in the conference. And neither USC nor Oregon looked anywhere near like they did in their first 2 games. That first conference road game of the season is sneaky tough, and maybe, and to your point about the freshman quarterback, This is his first road game, too. And it's a different... Wisconsin is struggling. I don't think Fickle makes it. But maybe he just really takes the step back, and maybe this is a double bet out of situation where Maryland really stinks it up, and then you've got a good chance to fade. I don't know who Wisconsin plays the following week, but the schedule gets a lot tougher pretty soon here. I remember just their schedule is absolutely brutal this year, so maybe you hope that Wisconsin gets a gaudy headline score here, and then you sell that news next week. Were you looking up who they play next week, Doug, as you went to one of your 7 screens?
Yeah, they hit the bye, and then they go to Michigan on October 4th.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the angle to play here. Yeah, forgot about the first conference road game here. So, not a play for me. This next one is fascinating in that you've got, I don't know. I look heavily at coaches, and I don't know what to make of the coaching matchup here of North Carolina at UCF. UCF getting 6.5, which is interesting considering that UCF was in a dogfight with Jacksonville State and their rebuild, a bigger rebuild than what UCF is looking at. And then they played North Carolina TNT, who I guess is rivals with North Carolina Verizon. I don't know. North Carolina, everybody saw their game against TCU. I did a hatchet job on North Carolina. They really weren't great against Charlotte, as the noted Hawks of Monmouth scored more points against Charlotte than they got things right supposedly against Richmond. Maybe the thing that just sticks out here, and again, you got to take it with a grain of salt because it was against Jacksonville State. I think Taven Jackson is the real deal. Now, in true Scott Frost fashion, he tried to go with Cam Fancher until Cam Fancher got hurt and forced his hand. And what do you know? The right answer was thrust upon Mr. Frost eventually here. Man, I spent 5 minutes in the earlier podcast talking about how just Belichick is not the same guy, and I'd rather have Barry Odom coaching my program, but I'm just stuck on, can Scott Frost really just beat a Bill Belichick's team by a touchdown? I guess that's my first question. I can't get past that. How about you, Duck?
The line doesn't seem like it's really that accurate to me. I'm really stunned that North Carolina is this big of a dog. I think people still maybe have that nationally televised TCU game still in their mind. But UNC's played well outside of that. Beat Charlotte 20-3, beat Richmond 41-6, and really have improved defensively as a unit in those couple of weeks.
Defensively, I think that's a good point. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know that I'm running to the window necessarily to lay it here with UCF. I think it'll be another one of those where it's a real interesting data point for both. North Carolina A&T is a really bad FCS team that's just void of talent and doesn't really do a lot. I think there was a couple defensive touchdowns or a special team score and several interceptions that set up short fields. It's like it really snowballed so quickly that it's really hard to draw a lot of tangible data out of that game. But I don't know. I think Bill Belichick, one thing we'll see from his group is over the course of the season, he'll have his guys get better week to week, as a good coach can do. And teams should improve throughout the season, you would hope. And so I think we'll see that with his group. Just not one I'm real interested in betting either way. I would say if I was really feeling like I wanted to do something here, I could see North Carolina winning this game on the field. And so if I really wanted to, I would take North Carolina on the money line at plus 205 and do something that way with it. But I'm not laying the touchdown here with Central Florida, not at all.
Yeah, as you were talking through that, I was coming to the same conclusion. Robert, does the money line seem like maybe if I gave you $100 on this one, is that how you would play it?
Why not both? Why just limit yourself to just the money line? You could also get the spread too. No. If you're sitting here and you're like, man, can't wait to bet UCF minus 6.5, get help. Like, why would you, if you have that much confidence in Scott Frost, that's terrifying. I don't know who would have that much confidence in Scott Frost. Yeah, okay, you've got Tavian Jackson, but I don't think Jacksonville State did a lot of prep for Tavian Jackson because he wasn't supposed to be the starter, so that's a thing. Also, Jacksonville State basically fully rebuilding, even though they somehow did beat Liberty, too. So that is probably one of the reasons why my model has UCF favored in this game, because of some residual stuff from last year. The thing is, we think TCU is good and probably better than people think it is. Charlotte is a rebuilding team, Richmond, whatever. But like we think Sony Dykes and TCU are a good team, and that's why we think they crushed North Carolina. I don't think Central Florida and Scott Frost are a good team. I don't think they are. And I think how much of the time do we just talk about this? Just comes down to coaching. Literally, this is just coaching. And do I think Bill Belichick is at this moment one of the best coaches in all of FBS? No. I don't even think he's maybe even top 25 coaches. I'm not sure where I draw that line. But Scott Frost is definitely neither of those as well. I think it's weird because I feel like this is almost like an NFL play where you're just like, I'll take the better coach or the better quarterback with the points. And I think that's what you have to do here. I think you just take the points here. You take the better coach with the points. And like, you just say, whatever, this game is going to be crazy. Something weird's going to happen in this game for sure. But I'd probably if you bet North Carolina and North Carolina doesn't cover, you're like, I guess Bill Belichick's that bad. But if you bet UCF minus 6.5, and then something bad happens, you're going to be like, why did I bet on Scott Frost? You're going to have so much regret. You're going to be like, why did I do this? This is a horrible idea. So, yeah, go with North Carolina.
Yeah, it's either, Belichick's not that good anymore, or if you bet on Central Florida and they lose, it's I'm not good anymore. I just stopped betting. I guess the one thing we're coming to this, and just to be explicit about it, I don't think you can overestimate how do I say this, the drop in the quality of the defensive coordinator when you go from facing Andy Avalos to facing Alex Grinch. That is several steps down. So I wouldn't be surprised if I wake up Saturday morning and see that Friday night I put a small money line play on North Carolina. I'll put it that way. You can Venmo me the $100 too, Robert, just to make on this one. This line, I don't know if I put this down wrong or if this has just really moved that much. Duck, did Eastern Michigan open as the favorite here over Louisiana? I thought they did.
I don't think so. I think it's been bet down from 6.5.
With Louisiana as the favorite?
Yeah, I think they opened as a favorite of 6.5.
We're talking about the team in Lafayette, the Cajuns.
Yeah, I think they opened 6.5 and were quickly bet down.
I think you're right, yeah.
Man alive. Okay. And this is truly the stoppable force versus the easily movable object. I know Eastern Michigan has had some serious problems on defense here. But look, I can forgive. Texas State's going to do that to a lot of people this year, I think. For whatever reason, it's really working well so far. Is Kentucky great? No, but they're an SEC team at least. Okay, so I can forgive an outmatched Eastern Michigan team for giving up that many points. I just can't get past this number right here, the apex for Louisiana. Robert, we broke it down at the end of the part 1 yesterday. They had bad numbers against bad teams. Apologies, Duck. I know you're a little partial to Rice here. Not a good passing. They were negative 24 apex, and this is multiple guys. It's not like one guy. Everybody they try, including the guy named Lunch, they all had negative apexes except for that one game against McNeese, where they got all the way up to a 24. Congratulations on that, guys. Really well done. I look, I know the Sun Belt's a better league than the MAC. Maybe I'm a little biased. The whole thing about Noah Kim is maybe overqualified for this Eastern Michigan team. I could see him making things difficult. Look at this, and Texas State's going to skew this number, but as bad as Eastern Michigan's defense has been, Louisiana's been just as bad against the run. Maybe I'm just going, Noah Kim is so much better than whatever kind of, as to use Duck's pronunciation, garbage is at the Louisiana quarterback position. And I'm getting points at home. And I like Michael DeSormeau, but man, what am I missing, Duck?
Eastern Michigan has a bottom 5 FBS defense. They can't stop the pass. They can't stop the run. They give up explosive plays. They can't stop teams in the red zone. It's just been atrocious. I like Chris Creighton. I think he's a great coach. This is probably the worst defense he's ever had. Mm-hmm. Already 18 red zone possessions against them in 3 games, and they lost on their home field to Long Island as 23-point favorites. It's just not good. And you look through the rest of the way, and they're going to have to make a decision soon on what they want to do because it's not a bowl team. And so your season is going to be, you got to define the purpose of your season from here on out and what is it that your team is going to be in 2025. Offensively, I thought they showed a lot of fight against Kentucky. I had the over. I had the Kentucky team total over, and that was a rocking chair winner that almost hit in the first half, and it was just one of those super nice, pleasant plays that played out exactly how I thought. And Eastern Michigan kept throwing it around, kept scoring points. They had a lot of fight. And I would like to think that they're going to be able to do that against Louisiana. Louisiana, unfortunately, their quarterback, Walker Howard, went out for the season with a non-contact injury to, I think, his knee or his foot or something. But he's out, and their other two guys, Lunch Winfield and Daniel Beal, just cannot complete passes. No. They are throwing, it's 36% on the season, and they've thrown for 178 yards total in 3 games. Now, if you cannot complete passes against Eastern Michigan, which I don't necessarily, I'm not saying they're going to, but if you can't pass it on Eastern Michigan, you really are in some major trouble. Louisiana may not win another game the rest of the year outside of this one or Marshall the following week. They're going to could get swept in the Sun Belt otherwise. It's really rough for them. I would honestly say I think this is one that Eastern Michigan can possibly get. I think that you'll see this group be able to move the football on Louisiana's defense, which played pretty well in the first 2. Really were able to bottle up Rice, and then they did what they needed to do against McNeese. There's no way they were going to compete against Missouri, but this is one Eastern Michigan can go out and get. I'd like the offense to carry the load here, and the defense might get run on, but maybe they don't if they know that Louisiana can't throw the ball. This is one where I would likely take a stab here with the Eagles.
And along the lines when I asked at the Big 12 preview, this is the best defense that, and it's a pretty poor analogy, but just humor me here. This is the best defense that Sonny Dykes has had. I think Noah Kim's probably the best quarterback that Chris Creighton has had. Is that fair?
There was another guy, too, the blonde-haired kid, number 4. What was his name? Brogdon or something. He was pretty good.
Okay. But Kim, it's the dropping in class in horse racing. He wasn't a Michigan State quality guy, but this is a big drop to here. I think that he's just...
Good MAC quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, Robert, did I convince you in part 1 when I pointed out, and maybe just there's no appreciation from the market on basically just how bad Louisiana was, not against Missouri, but against McNeese. That's what frightens me here.
Yeah. The thing is, and I think fundamentally this game boils down to this. Noah Kim is a quarterback. Not a great quarterback, but a FBS quarterback. Whatever Louisiana has in the form of multiple different people, none of them are FBS quarterbacks. And I think you're giving me the quarterback, an actual quarterback, and you're giving me points versus not an actual quarterback. So, yeah, I'm going to take the quarterback with points rather than not a quarterback with laying 2.5. Now, the thing is, though, obviously Eastern Michigan, like Louisiana, basically doesn't have any protection from its quarterback position. So they're going to run the ball, which is great because Eastern Michigan is also really bad at defending the run. So that works out very nicely for them. Very lucky for them. Why is this total like 50? Shouldn't this be like 80? Like, what's going to happen? Okay, here, they break another 75-yard run. Is that like, this could be like a very, like, this 50 seems pretty low for this game. Like, I feel they're not going to be able to stop their run, and they're probably not going to really be able to shut down their passing game. I don't know. I don't think Louisiana can win a game where they just can't do anything through a quarterback, like through pass. If you have no offensive production to the quarterback position, I don't think you can win a game. Like, I don't think you can.
Yeah. Duck, let me ask you a really unfair question, but if there's anybody on the planet I think that I would trust to make a stab at this, it would be you. Do you, and again, unfair, but just humor the old guy here. Do you think Eastern, and it's a serious question too, because I generally do not know. I know Eastern Michigan's defense is really bad by FBS standards. Do you think it's better than McNeese's, though? I honestly don't know.
I would assume it is, yeah. I would assume it's possibly.
Okay.
If you line the players up and you're drafting which players you'd want, and one guy picks on this side and you go back and forth like in pickup basketball, more Eastern Michigan players would be picked first.
Okay. All right. Fair. Yeah, I'm down on the Eagles. So, were you going to say something else? Look like you were going to jump in with one other thought there.
Yeah, the totals actually come down from 52. Gonna get some wind in Ypsilanti this weekend during game time, 18 to 22 mile-an-hour gusts, so that could affect it slightly.
Oh, okay. I won't touch the total.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
All right. I appreciate the guidance on that. Again, that was break glass and ask Duck in case of emergency here. So thank you for your help on that. All right, another big one here. Auburn at Oklahoma. I'll do a cursory thing on the stats here. These teams are allegedly about even in terms of apex. Auburn has run the ball better. Oklahoma more explosive passing offense. Real big difference here in the defenses here. Oklahoma just shut down the passing of, now admittedly, not such great passing offenses as Michigan and Temple, despite Ethan or Evan Simon? Evan Simon? Who's the... Yeah. Of Evan Simon's emergence this year. Auburn a little bit better against the run. I guess here's the thing is I don't think that Auburn has played anything resembling a real defense so far. Oklahoma's played Michigan. Look, Baylor, I love Aranda, good defensive coordinator. His Baylor teams have not had good defenses at all, and this year is probably one of the worst. Ball State is just not a functional FBS team. Thank you very much. South Alabama, nice, but nice-ish for a Sun Belt team. I think that I don't get this line. If I would back Oklahoma, I would probably give up to, I don't know, a field goal more than this. If I was going to back Auburn, I would want at least 14.5 here. So I think that we're off by about 4 or 5 points, just how I do these things in my mind. Let me see what my model says. Robert, do you have handy what your model has on this one too?
Yeah, let me just call that up.
Yeah.
I have...
You've got it close, actually. You have Oklahoma by 2.
Yeah, I do have it close, but I think it's because I have... There's a lot of Oklahoma data from last year, yeah. So that's... Yeah.
Yeah, I've got Oklahoma. My model loves Oklahoma here. I think it's the play. I'm at a loss at why this hasn't crossed 7 yet. I think this is just... They're just a much better team. Aside from the numbers, which when you unskew for strength of opponent, point to Oklahoma as well. Tough road game for Auburn, too. I don't get the case for Auburn. Let me start with that, Duck. If you're going to make a case for Auburn, what would it be?
You could possibly see Oklahoma, I don't know, losing track of Arnold on the ground with his leg. I don't want to bet Auburn here. I really wouldn't. And I could see Jackson Arnold maybe getting loose and breaking down that defense a little bit with his legs like he's done throughout the rest of the way here, but they're really going to have to execute offensively and bring it here because Oklahoma defensively has just taken their performance to another level. The red zone performance has been spectacular. The third down performance situationally has been really fantastic. They're getting teams off the field, and they're really leaving no doubt in the third and fourth quarters on the money downs, and just when the game's on the line, they really have completely just slammed the door. I thought Auburn was messing around a little bit with South Alabama last week. I was impressed with the Jaguars and how they went in there and played that game against Auburn on the road. I'm not a believer in Auburn in general, so I think the slide is something that we're really going to start to see. You look at Auburn, they're starting to get a lot of love, they're starting to get a lot of hype, but they got back-to-back roadies now against Oklahoma and A&M. Then they have Georgia and Missouri that come to town. They still got to play Pavia, and you know that Hugh Freeze doesn't want to see him. He's already been Pavia'd 3 times in his life. And then you conclude the season with Alabama. I think Auburn's barely a bowl team anyway, and I think we've got a line that's reflective of Auburn's ranking that's next to their name, but no, this is Oklahoma or nothing for me without question.
When you say for you, does that mean that you're not necessarily playing it, but if Robert gave you $100, that's how you play?
I haven't wagered on the game yet, but there's a chance that I might push a little money across the table on Oklahoma.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, and the other thing too, I guess, is Venables has stopped much once he got things fixed. He stopped quarterbacks much more capable than Jackson Arnold, and he knows every hole in that kid's game too, which would frighten me from an Auburn standpoint. So. Mm-hmm. Robert, can you make a compelling case? And this is just asking, I don't know, the vegetarian to make a case for Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's no case for Auburn here, right?
No, not particularly. And I think on just any sort of metric, Michigan is a far better team than anything either of these teams has faced. And if you're to make an argument for one team's numbers being either deflated or not where they should be, it'd be because Oklahoma played Michigan, a good Michigan defense, and had that issue. And again, they won very clearly covered. But again, they didn't absolutely dominate. So, I'd assume that even though technically Auburn has a higher apex here, that's not real. That's 100% not real. So, this is also technically a bit of a Jackson Arnold revenge game. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. Did Jackson Arnold just say, I'm leaving, or did Oklahoma push him? I'm not sure. I think it was more the pushing one than I'm leaving one, but that's okay. No, I like Oklahoma here. We talked about this in the main podcast. I think Oklahoma and Texas A&M are quite possibly the two best teams in the SEC. They're, for some reason, like the fifth and sixth highest odds team to win the SEC. They shouldn't be. In my opinion, they should be almost up there at the top. Maybe not. If you don't want to put them as the favorites, you want to leave Georgia and Alabama up there, sure, okay. But they should be a lot closer than like 12-1 and 13-1 than that. No, I think Oklahoma, should win this game, should be able to cover this spread. I got this at, I want to say, 4.5. So I bought this, I think, last week at 4.5. So I'm good here. I got this already. I can just sit back and watch. But no, it's when, like, I'm excited for this Oklahoma team, and I'm excited to see what this Oklahoma team does in a couple of weeks against Texas. But no, I don't think Auburn is that good. I think Auburn is about to get exposed as not being as good as they seem to be. So, yeah, give me Oklahoma here.
Okay. All right, we're unanimous on that to differing degrees. This is a tricky one.
Yes.
This is a good one to watch. I'm not sure about how we play it. Let's just look. So Michigan giving 2.5 at Nebraska. So Michigan has played New Mexico, which I kind of want to say has aged well. I don't know. UCLA was circling the drain. At Oklahoma, then Central Michigan. So I think you've probably got a better quality of opponent here than Nebraska. Versus Cincinnati, that was at a neutral site, I believe. And then hosting Akron, great. And then an FCS team. So nod of strength of opponent goes to Michigan, I think, here pretty clearly. Nebraska throwing the ball better against lesser opponents, that's fine. Michigan running the ball better, that makes sense from what we've seen. Nebraska more explosive. Nebraska better against the pass. Now, let's just figure this out. Against Brendan Sorsby and Akron, okay, great. Michigan also really good against the pass, too. Maybe they're about the same in terms of passing defense. Nebraska giving up a lot on the ground. Maybe I'll start there because I really don't have an opinion on this one yet. Who ran it up against Nebraska on the ground, Duck? Do you know?
I don't really remember anybody doing that, but there's a chance that Cincinnati moved it a little bit. I'm going to take a peek at that here.
Yeah, now that I'm seeing that, I'm wondering if that's what my model has. Michigan is such a big favorite here. It's going to be like 80-yard touchdown runs.
Cincinnati ran for 202 on 30 carries, but Akron, all they did was run the ball. Nobody's been able to pass the ball on Nebraska all season. They haven't given up any more than 70 pass yards in a game. And the way I see this is, I see a fun game here, a good barometer for where Nebraska is at as a program, and if they've really elevated themselves from what they were over the last 10 years, which I think Matt Rule is well on his way of doing. Nebraska's bugaboo has been poor execution in the red zone and untimely turnovers, which have created bizarre ways to lose football games, and it just appears that has corrected itself. They have not turned the ball over very frequently, if at all. The red zone execution has been dynamic. And if you just go look at the pressers, the halftime speeches, and all the things that are coming out of Nebraska camp, this group is so locked in and so motivated. They were up 33-0 against Akron and not satisfied, and they were just playing to the whistle the entire 60 minutes, which is something you have not seen from these teams in the past. The way I played this is I don't think we're going to get a tremendous amount of pace on either side. Matt Rule has shown a propensity to be very conservative in his play calling in the second halves. I think we're going to see a real slow burner grinder game. Michigan's got Underwood, who this road spot that he played poorly in against Oklahoma could possibly help him here. But he still hasn't had a lot of time in the seat, and I think you need a little bit more time in the seat before you're going to go on the road in conference to this environment and light it up. Nebraska's allowing just 8 out of 38 on third down this season, and again, nobody's passed on them for more than 70 yards in a game, so I don't see Nebraska giving it up tremendously in the passing game, and I think they'll be able to creep an 8th guy into the box to get the numbers favorable for them to stop the run. I don't know if Michigan wins. I don't know if Nebraska wins, but I took Michigan's team total under 24.5. I don't think Michigan's going to go in there and light up the scoreboard. Whoever wins this game, it's going to be 17-13, 17-16, that sort of score. It's not going to be a 30-27 type game. I think that the winner of the game has at most 20 24 points. So I took Michigan's team total under. I think Nebraska has a hell of a chance to go in there and win.
Yeah, and Robert, it seems like maybe just Nebraska with a little bit plus money might be the play here.
I think also a kind of overlooked angle here is a Nebraska teaser. You can get that to 8.5. That plus there's a couple of other potentially teasable lines in that time zone, in that time slot. You get Eastern Michigan up to 8.5. You could get, there's a couple of potentially teasable places there. So I'm not sure how much I love that line though, but I definitely want to watch this game. I've circled this game for a while. I'm not sure exactly why this line has exploded after Biff Poggi and Michigan annihilated Central Michigan. Because the thing is, I think this is where the model is like turning in on itself. Michigan has done everything possible to like absolutely fry the model. Because it's, okay, we're going to beat a New Mexico team that beats a Big Ten team. And then we're going to beat a Central Michigan team. We're going to absolutely annihilate a Central Michigan, the team that beat one of the theoretically better teams in the Mountain West that also was like somewhat competitive with Texas to some extent, right? So, not really competitive, but it was somewhat in that game. They didn't close. They covered the spread against Texas at least. I think all Michigan's opponents are just doing whatever they can to just mess with our modeling here. I think the Nebraska was very weird because I think they really tried really hard to lose that game against Cincinnati. Like, I watched that game. They really tried to lose that game. They did literally nothing on offense, which is annoying because they have a really good offense. And they were just like, no, we're not going to. What do you want us to go score points? We need to score points. It's fine. And that's the thing. If they had actually tried, they could have blown them out in that game. And they just didn't. So, I don't think Nebraska has peaked yet. I think this is going to be a tough game for Michigan. I'm initially going to take the plus. I'm going to see if I can. I think I already have a teaser with this already. But I want at least a 3.5 for Nebraska here, but if I get something live, that's a possibility as well. I think that the Michigan explosion against Central Michigan, I think that deserves fading as well. I don't think, like, Biff Poggi was not a particularly great coach. I'm not sure exactly why he is the interim coach for Michigan. I'm not sure how he got that job or why he got that job, but he is for some reason. Okay. So I'm not really thinking fading him because, again, I'm fairly sure he doesn't actually do anything. He just stands there and the defensive and offensive coordinator call the plays. But I do still want to fade that a little bit. So I do Nebraska here. I'm just not sure. I'm not gutsy enough to take the 2.5. I'm going to try to throw it in teaser.
Kind of like me, Biff Poggi. I just sit here and throw it to you guys, and you guys do all the heavy lifting here. If there's a play, I think it's on the Nebraska side, but I just don't know if I'm inclined. There's probably better places to make a play here, I feel. I like your idea about the teaser, though. I just can't see Michigan running away with it by more than a touchdown.
Yeah, here's your teaser. Nebraska plus 8.5, tease up to 6. Oklahoma to minus 0.5.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. Troy at Buffalo, giving 6. Maybe I'm just too much of a Troy skeptic to the end here. I just think Buffalo's a legitimate MAC team, and Troy is. I think they're just getting too much credit for that Clemson game. Credit to him for playing well. Troy can't throw the ball. And is Goose Crowder out? Did he get hurt?
Yeah, Goose Crowder threw a 75-yard touchdown on Troy's third play of the game against Memphis. It was called back for holding, and he got hurt 2 plays later and was out for the remainder of their game. And their backup, Kilcrest, could not throw the ball and could not read the defense, held onto it way too long. I think he was sacked 8 times, and just atrocious quarterback play. And then the pressers, the Troy coaching staff pressers, it was stunning to hear what they said about their inability to move the ball with the guys they had on offense, lack of preparedness for the backup, just not being in a position to win, and they don't have a backup quarterback that's competent.
Yeah,
so they're not going to move the ball
out
here. Yeah, he's out for some time.
Okay. Then what? Okay, so you've made the case that look, Troy is just there's just nothing there. Look, Buffalo, they hung with Minnesota for a while. Actually, they got more of a game than they should have from Kent State, and I don't know if that's a matter of sneakily was Kenny Burns the problem the whole time there. I think they have other problems too. I don't know. But Buffalo came back. I just don't think Troy's very good, and especially without Crowder. there's no functional offense there. I think that you've got a functional offense in Buffalo here. I don't think that Troy's defense is anything special that really it's okay. Buffalo can't deal with that. I guess the first thing, Duck, am I just missing something on the Buffalo side here? You were bullish on the Bulls coming into the season too, right?
Still am, and they just didn't show up against Kent State. Kent State got 2 long passes past them, and it was 14-0 Kent State. Buffalo did a good job of battling back. Just didn't play very buttoned-up football, and you could just see the attitude of the entire team was just like, we're going to roll in here and show up and win this game by 30 points, and Kent State was ready to go. I really don't take too much more away from that. I don't think Kent State's tremendously improved. I don't think Buffalo is garbage. All I know is that defense is really one that can lock teams down, and Troy cannot throw the ball with the backup quarterback, and so all the metrics have to just now point to, can Troy run the ball against Buffalo? And I don't think they can. I think that Buffalo will be wide-eyed when Troy comes in. They're ready to go. They had their scare the pants off you type of game against Kent State. Now they're reawakened, and Buffalo's just going to grind this game down. It's a non-conference game. It really doesn't mean a tremendous amount to Buffalo, but they're going to want to get the win at home. They'll run the ball, grind this game down, and I think it's going to be as low scoring as you'll see, 21-6 type of game. So I took under 43.5. It's a low total. It's hard to do, but Troy's defense really did well. If you go back and look at the tape or the stats for the first 3 quarters, Troy did an exceptional job against Memphis's offensive attack. Memphis couldn't move the ball. They were really struggling on third down. They couldn't run it with explosivity. Troy was really hanging in there, and so I think we'll see some of that. But at the end of the day, their defense was just put in too many bad spots because their offense in the first 3 quarters did Troy outside of the first drive. They had 4 yards. Troy scored on a defensive touchdown. And so you put the defense out there in bad situations time and time again, bad things are eventually going to happen. So I think this is a slow burn. I think Buffalo is going to have to control this game and limit the mistakes. There's no reason to be flashy here. And I think we'll just see as low scoring a grind out game as you can possibly get. I'll be stunned if Troy scores more than 10 points. I think Buffalo's good for 21, so I'd take Buffalo against the number.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that the strength of opponent lies with Troy, but I do want to point out that they face 2 quarterbacks that I've been very skeptical about this year too, in Klubnik and Lewis. Robert, I'm offering you Troy. Now your quarterback has an apex of -6, but I'm giving you 6 points. That's enough for you, right?
I think in this number, there's like 1,000%. But Troy almost beat Clemson, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, we can't give you 14.5 because Troy almost beat Clemson. So they know they'd have so much Troy money that you can't run that risk. And to be fair, at this number, you're probably already getting a ton of Troy money. We'll have to see the betting breakouts later this week, but I'm fairly sure the public's going to be on Troy here. I'm not a big fan of Troy. I think my model is absolutely punishing Buffalo for almost losing to Kent State because my model does not like Buffalo in this game, but I'm fairly sure that was just weird, and maybe Kent State is doing something. I'm not sure yet exactly. Maybe they got really lucky in that game. I don't know. But it's weird, right? And Buffalo played a relatively competitive game with Minnesota and then almost lost to Kent State. So what is happening? I don't know. But this is the thing, right? I don't know if Buffalo is not good or not. I'm starting to somewhat think maybe Kent State isn't the worst team in the MAC. Maybe not the worst team in FBS anymore, right? I think Ball State and UMass are worse. So maybe Kent State is no longer in the basement there. Mark Carney, our Prime Minister, he's doing a great job there at Kent State.
Yes.
So
it was a Kenny Burns problem. Yes.
Yeah, he runs the Canadian economy on the weekdays, and on the weekends he coaches up a bottom-tier MAC school to relevance. It's amazing, right? No, yeah, give me Buffalo here. I think my model is overly bearish on Kent State at this exact moment, but I suspect in a couple weeks that'll clear itself out. So, yeah.
Shrewd move by Kent State getting your Prime Minister because they're under-resourced, but if they pay in American dollars, that goes a lot farther in Canada. So I think that's how they could pull that off.
Yeah, that is true. That's smart, right? Normally we'd have to pay this guy so much money, but we can make 30% less.
Yeah. Good move, Kent State. All right. You've turned the corner here. All right, looking for a little affirmation here. I think this line is funny. Jalen Rayner, Arkansas State did give Iowa State a good game. They played they're overmatched against Arkansas, so I'm not going to crush them too much for that. But boy, Jalen Rayner needs to be better than an apex of 21 at this point. I think, not to grind the numbers on this one, the big thing I'm taking away is Kennesaw State is approaching functionality, and that's against Wake Forest, okay, their first game, but that's a legitimate Power 4 team. And Indiana, as we've seen, who loves to just shove your face in it for all 4 quarters no matter what. I'm just looking from a narrative standpoint. Butch Jones has kind of ruined Jalen Rayner here, and I think Kennesaw might have actually stumbled into the right guy. I remember in the Sun Belt preview that I think they got a guy I couldn't fade. My Owls, I think this line is just funny too, because if you told me towards the end of last year Arkansas State's going to be giving less than a touchdown at Kennesaw State, I would have laughed, and I'm still laughing at this. I don't know if I have the stones to back Kennesaw State. I don't know. I'm just going to... Is it enough for you just to look at Butch Jones and say, okay, Kennesaw State now actually has a reasonable coach and I can get almost a touchdown here, Duck? Or do you need a little more than that?
I really don't. Their defense for Arkansas State is so bad. 7 yards per play given up. 7.7, excuse me, and 6.5 yards per carry on the ground. They've just been shredded and just don't have a propensity to get stops. The red zone defense is terrible. And they're now going to a venue they've never played at. And where did we see this before? We saw Liberty get burned at Kennesaw State. Just a strange travel situation, a spot they've never been to, playing in a weird environment, and it's an out-of-conference game. I think this is such an easy line to set if you're the books, and people saw Arkansas State, and they almost just beat Iowa State. Iowa State's 12th ranked. They went toe-to-toe. They'll win this game by a touchdown. Let's set the line at -6 and bait all that money in, and money's pouring in on Arkansas State, and the line has not moved. And it tells me all I need to know on this one, and that Arkansas State is in some major trouble here on the road against the Owls. The Owls have performed better than expected. The Indiana game went sideways, but midway through the second quarter, it was still within shouting distance. It was like 21-9 in the second quarter. Kennesaw State scored 3 times on them. They kicked field goals, but they scored 3 times on Indiana. And what else would you expect from Kennesaw in that situation? Really not much more. And not one I'm dying to really get involved in here, but it's Kennesaw State or nothing here for me.
Yeah, and if there is any kind of coach that would just suffer from losing the exhale game after that Iowa State game, his first name is Butch, and his last name starts with a J. Robert, are you going to be bold enough to take the Owls here, or you just want to talk about it and not back it like me?
No, yeah. I think I actually will take it. My model only has Kennesaw State as 4-point underdogs, which is not a ton of value, but that's enough value. I think that's it. There's a lot of compelling reasons that this should be a play, right? It's very hard to do the differences between playing an FCS team and an FBS team. I think there is an argument that Arkansas State got absolutely destroyed by Arkansas, not even close. Iowa State was more competitive, but Iowa State's had this very sneakily difficult run here. You play Kansas State and Ireland, then you play an FCS team, which is just fine. Then you play Iowa, then you play Arkansas State. I think this week they have someone else who's good too, right? Don't they? I think Iowa State, or are they out of bye week this week? They play randomly someone good next time too. Their schedule keeps getting worse somehow. But no, sneakily just okay, whatever. We don't care. Just win the game. It's fine. That was that spot for Iowa State. But no, I think Kennesaw State is very playable here. Also, shout out to Merrimack, just apparently playing all of the MAC teams for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why. They're let's schedule the worst MAC teams for some reason. I don't know why they did that, but shout out to them for just scheduling MAC teams for some reason.
But and Kennesaw State.
Go
ahead. Conference USA.
Oh, okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, that's right. They scheduled the bottom MAC team in Kent State and the bottom Conference USA team in Kent State. So they're really good at trying to pick off the bottom teams.
They missed the mark with Kent State, though. They're a year too late on that.
Yeah.
All right, couple more here. Just real quick. You mentioned this already, and this is my angle on this one, Duck. I just don't think. I know. Breaking news here. I don't think Tim Beck's Coastal Carolina team is any good. The quarterback position is an absolute disaster. I really like South Alabama. I was bearish on them in our Cell Belt preview, and then afterwards Josh said, yeah, you got the quarterback position wrong. South Alabama looks to be actually more than functional here. They've got an offense here. This is respectable. 115 apex when you've played Tulane and Auburn, at Auburn for that matter. I don't think this is anything less than a 3-score game. I think South Alabama is the goods. I don't know if they're going to win the West, but they're going to contend for the West. I think Coastal Carolina, and this says a lot, they might contend for the bottom of the East, and that is a loaded mouthful right there. Just big picture, I like South Alabama here, but I wanted to run that by you, Duck. What do you think?
Yeah, Coastal Carolina has been in steady decline. Tim Beck's first year, he was still living off of Jamie Chadwell's players, and they were competent and serviceable. And then last year, it really got jerky there at the end, and you saw the chinks in the armor, so to speak, with this team. And then this year, it's just been absolutely atrocious. They could not move the ball and score on East Carolina, whose defense is just not particularly good. They scored 13 points against Charleston Southern, who is an atrocious FCS team. Anyone else, you look at ECU in their FCS game, they played a better FCS opponent and scored 56-3. And anyone else would have scored 50 points on Charleston Southern, and they couldn't get a first down. They couldn't throw a forward pass. They've rotated through some quarterbacks. Morris is clearly not the guy that's for the position. And the backup, Tad Hudson, has also struggled. They're completing just 50% as a team, 0 touchdown passes, 6 total interceptions. It's just been so stinking bad for Coastal Carolina. South Alabama, I think, has actually played some pretty competent football this year. I've been impressed with how they played against Auburn, and they went toe-to-toe with Tulane, had a chance to win, throwing into the end zone as time expired. They've played some good teams and have had some good showings here. Immediately, first play I made on this one when the lines came out is I played under 52.5. And I also played Coastal Carolina's team total under 17.5. I don't see how they move the ball. I don't see how they put drives together. They haven't done it all season. Scored 7 against Virginia. They scored the points against Charleston Southern, but they're scoring 6 points per game. Third down conversion percentage is just awful, 30%, 13 for 42. Red zone possessions have been very limited, and they're not scoring touchdowns in the red zone. This team just situationally cannot get it together. 3.7 yards per rush, 4 yards a play, and they have not played exceedingly great defenses. And now you step up here in conference play on the road. I think this can just get really jerky for Coastal Carolina. It's not going to end well, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. Robert, there's no way you're going to back Tim Beck in a spot like this. I guess the question is, are you passing or are you going with South Alabama?
My model weirdly has this somewhat competitive. I have South Alabama as a favorite, but not by more than 2 scores. I don't know. I might pass. I might throw something on this. Again, it's a little early. Some of the stuff, like there's some last season Coastal Carolina data in here. Maybe some last season South Alabama data in here too. So it's maybe I'm throwing it off a bit. I will say that Coastal Carolina is like really bad. I think last week I got something insane. Like I think it was like I can't remember exactly what line it was, but it was like ECU minus like either 5.5 or 6.5, and it wasn't even close. Not even remotely close to what the final outcome of the game was. I think they got shut out, if I'm not mistaken, or they scored once or something. This Coastal Carolina is sneakily bad, and it's only sneakily bad because we just don't talk about it enough. Like it's there, but we just don't talk about how bad Coastal Carolina is. It is rough. It is really rough. They got blown out by Virginia. They got blown out by East Carolina. I think they beat Charleston Southern, but like this is going to be one of the worst Coastal Carolina teams we've seen in quite a while. Like they can't score. And you can see that by the apex of 6. That's what that means, right? That's only topped, or I guess bottomed, by the apex of Louisiana. They're in a really rough shape, and I think. Yeah, South Alabama particularly good. They're okay, but I think they should be able to win and cover here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right. We're not going to have time for quacks. We'll have to defer to that to next week. Sorry, Doc. We'll have an extended version next week. Look, I think you're going to have a big swing. As I talked about with USC earlier, they just didn't look the same in their first conference road game. This game against Michigan State, USC is giving 17.5. USC is a different team at home. This game kicks at 11 p.m. East Lansing time. Congratulations. You got screwed by the conference, Sparty. I think that you're going to see one of the best version of USC at home. Michigan State seems to, I'll put it this way, I'm not really sold on their defense. Now, they've been stout against the run here against Western and Boston College. Congratulations with Stanford. I think that USC is a well-balanced offense, too. This is an easy spot for them. So I think maybe USC first half is the play here. USC has tended to start really well at home, too. Yeah, look, and I believe in Jonathan Smith, hoping he doesn't go to UCLA. He's smarter than that. But I'm not one that usually bets on my own team, but this USC first half seems like a pretty solid play for me. What do you think, Duck?
UCLA is vastly improved. USC is vastly improved. Their defense has played really well. Just a tricky travel spot for Michigan State. Would want really no part of the Spartans here. Yeah, it'd be USC or nothing here for me. And I think the first half play, they've shown such a propensity to score points in the first half this season that I think it's probably get a good line there too at 10 or so, maybe 8.5, 8.5, 9.5 something. So yeah, probably the play I would make, I'm guessing.
Give me scripted Lincoln Riley over unscripted. Robert, you gonna go with scripted Lincoln Riley here too?
Yeah. Again, this is something very weird that my model is shorter than this book spread in some of these games. I'm gonna look into that. Again, obviously, weird stuff happens early season with the modeling, so I'm going to have to see if it's something else or if it's just early season stuff. Michigan State beat Boston College in, I want to say, double overtime, and Boston College got absolutely destroyed by Stanford. So that doesn't look particularly great for Michigan State. Michigan State, clearly a massive underdog here. Michigan State is rebuilding. They're doing some things. But if your best win is against a team that got absolutely clobbered by a horrific Stanford team, yeah, I don't have much hope.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That is it. We're out of time. Duck, Robert, good luck to you guys this week. We'll be in contact. Thank everybody for listening, watching. We appreciate you guys, and good luck this weekend. Until then, we will see you next week.